Hey guys, and welcome back to Shredcraft RC. If there's one thing that I've learned in the RC drift hobby over the years that I've been playing with these fun toy cars is that the only thing that is consistent is change. And what do I mean by that? Is in the remote control car hobby, especially in RC drifting, nobody ever drives a chassis for, let's say, longer than a year. You don't need to get back into the comments and be like, oh, I've had my car for 6 years, because there are people that do that. I'm talking about what I've seen is people going through 5, 6, 7 chassis in 1 year and never really kind of understanding how one chassis drives versus another. I'm not saying it's wrong. Some people love just getting whatever's the newest, best thing out there. Now, if you've been with my channel for a while, you know I've been designing and making RC drift chassis from various materials, from carbon fiber, titanium, aluminum, even hand cutting some of my first designs. So this was my last design. This was the Scarab conversion for the Rev D RDX, and it has a few one-off parts that I've made. The ones that I sold had carbon top decks and carbon battery trays, and this one I've gone ahead and kind of played around with some titanium bits and stuff like that. With the only consistent thing in drifting being change, I'm gonna swap this chassis out for this chassis that I made a while ago, probably about 8 months ago, and I ran it a few times but never really got into tuning it or finding the benefits or negatives having a completely rigid chassis versus having a flex chassis. Now that I'm more well versed into tuning and understanding how these cars drive, I wanted to go back to this chassis for a number of reasons. And the first one being the other aspect of RC drifting that I found kind of entertaining and fun to pay attention to is rarity items. You see it happen all the time with brands like Overdose and Addiction. Brands like that kind of limit the market to what parts they release and how many parts they release and when they release them. And then there's the side of the hobby of us being the United States, where we don't have immediate support and access to Japanese brands, and we kind of have to wait for things to make their way over stateside. It's not an issue at all. It's just something I've noticed, and having rare parts and cool one-off items seem to be kind of a cool little niche in the hobby that I enjoy, because it's almost like creating the RC jewelry that I've used that term before, where these chassis almost become like artwork. There's so much time and money put into them, with everything down to even your bullet connectors or the screw dress-up washers that I even have on this chassis. A few things kind of initiated this move. I thought maybe it'd be fun if I did a live stream. I totally disassemble my current chassis, going to my one-off, one-of-a-kind RDX chassis that this is made out of aluminum. It's extremely light. I think it weighs 56 grams, and comparing all the aspects of my carbon setup to a full aluminum setup. Has your RC drift car kind of become a piece of art or RC jewelry? Let me know down in the comments if you have way too much invested in this hobby, kind of like I do. So I'm going to go ahead, kind of refresh things, keep changing things, and see if I can get this aluminum deck driving just like my carbon deck. I guess one thing that I always fail to mention with this is these cars scratch a bigger itch than just being toy cars for me. It's been a recreation of me trying to do this with real cars and build a real drift car, compete, and realizing that it just wasn't a sustainable option in motorsport for me at that point in time in my life. So these RC drift cars have kind of helped fill that void of where the real drift cars took over every thought, every waking moment of my life. And now, over the past year or so, maybe 2 or 3 years now, time's kind of flown, but these RC drift cars have just really scratched that itch for me, where I've been able to not only tune and change and design parts of my own, but getting to drive with like-minded individuals in that sense of being accurate and driving consistently and figuring out making little changes to the car can do so much to how the car actually drives and operates. So YouTube's given me a great platform to be able to share some of my tips and tricks and some of my experiences within the RC drift hobby, and that's been really fun for me, because the other aspect of cars in my life has always been video and photography. And for some of you who might not know, I used to film professional ski and snowboard movies in my younger years and lived up in the mountains and did a bunch of that stuff. So that's where I get a lot of my influence with my style and how I film and edit and create these videos. So my goal this year is to create a more cinematic style to these RC drift cars. I think there's a lot of potential, especially when you see how these things move on asphalt, how they drive, seeing giant trains at the track, kind of unique shots set up. That's definitely going to be one of my goals this year, is create better RC drift content, and I hope you'll want to join along on the journey. Now I'm sure some of you saw the live stream where I rebuilt this thing, but now instead of using this carbon deck, I'm using my one-off aluminum deck, just because I was saying I wasn't able to give it a good chance, and I want to try it out. Plus it's unique, it's a one-on-one, cool design. And going back to my topic of RC jewelry, so I think it looks pretty good. So I went and I shortened the rear arms, and that seemed to give me a lot better suspension movement. I think having that longer arm and a lower offset wheel was pushing the wheel more. Now I feel like this has a much plusher feel. The Rev D springs on the back, and I also went from a stock spring to the Rev D reds in the front. I need to grab a battery, and I'll probably do that on that video, and we'll get a feel how this feels. But I got the Ackerman fairly decent. A little bit toe out, a little bit negative camber, and actually reduced some caster just to fit in that Rev D body a little better. So I'm going to grab a battery, get the shock set up, and then I'll be able to throw it on the corner balance scales, see what the weight is looking like on this one. Here I got the RDX on the Sky RC corner weight system. As you can see, pretty appropriate weight balance between 34% front and the 66% rear, with 1100 and just about 57 grams total. And the balance side to side looks pretty good. I didn't adjust the shocks for corner weighting, which is what some people do. Just like to see where it sits. Nothing looks too far off or out of the ordinary. I'm pretty happy with that. It's still a fairly light chassis. I'm gonna have to take it out and drive it. Be sure to put some video of the aluminum RDX shredding. Real quick, throw the body on just so we can see what it looks like fully weighted. And if we pull that out, 1318 total weight. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with that. This car is definitely going to feel different than my carbon deck, but take it out and see what it can do.